So I wanted to come up here and go ahead and share my testimony about how God healed me from 17 years of chronic back pain due to scoliosis. So I'm going to try to recount my testimony from a previous video, and then I'm going to go from there. So it started back in 2001. Around 2001, I was in middle school, and during this time, the school would give you like certain like physical tests. And so in this particular test, they made us bend, and they put, I think if I can remember right, they would put like their finger down your spine and seeing if it was straight. But I didn't know that's what they were doing at the time. But they would put their finger or something down your spine to make sure it didn't have any abnormal curves or anything. So if I can remember right, I do remember doing my tests, and it seemed like I had to do it like more than once. Like I had to bend more than once. You know, like a lot of the other kids, you know, they had to bend and then let you go. But it seemed like from my blurry memory that they did have me like bend a couple of times. So anyways, I remember after that, I don't know if it was after I got home or if it was while I was in school, I can't remember. But I do remember I looked at the paper, because they sent the paper in our folders home. So I do remember looking at my paper where they did my exam at school, and I saw these circles like on my spine. It was like a picture of a spine, illustrated of a spine, and I saw like these circles and highlights. And that was the first time I saw the word scoliosis. But I didn't know what it meant. But that word did stick in my mind, it never left. But I do remember seeing like the circles, or the circle up top and the highlight like at the top of my spine. And so so in 2001, that's when I found out what the word, to me it was just a word, I didn't know what the word scoliosis existed. I didn't really have much information. But after that, I was like 11, I was close to 11 years old. And everything was just pretty much normal. I didn't have pain. I didn't really think about it anymore. Until I got later in my high school years, I noticed like a hump. I had like scoliosis gives you like a humpback, because your curves, they can only be hidden for so long, and it'll start to show on your physical appearance. So I do remember seeing like a hump starting to grow on my back, and I knew that wasn't normal to have like a hump on one side of your back. But at the time, I didn't know that there were different types of scoliosis. I just knew the word scoliosis, and I knew that it had something to do with my spine. So anyways, back in high school, that's when I noticed like my back didn't look like everybody else's. But I didn't really feel any pain like the beginning of high school. I didn't feel abnormal. But I started working fast food when I was around 15 or 16. And I think around age 17 was when I started to have like pains, like experience back pain. And so I do have a couple of notes, because I'm trying to make sure I stay on track, because I do forget some things. But when I started working is when I noticed I would have like back pain. But I thought it was normal. I thought everybody my age was having, like, if they went to work, that they had back pain. I didn't know that it wasn't abnormal, or it was abnormal, or it was because I had scoliosis. I mean, eventually I did figure it out, but in the beginning, when I had pain like that, I didn't really know, because I wasn't never really having pain before. So I was about 17 when I started experiencing like the beginning of chronic back pain. So keep in mind, I didn't know that there were different types of scoliosis, but I know now. I found out later on in my 20s that there were like different types. So I did find out that the type of scoliosis that I was diagnosed with was idiopathic scoliosis. So they have like a scoliosis that starts when you're in the womb, I think. Then they have one or two that's caused by like an injury or something going on with your muscles. Then you have the one where you get older in age, and I guess like your bones get weak, so your spine can curve. But I just know the one that I have, which is idiopathic scoliosis. There is no known cause. So idiopathic means a cause that's unknown. So So I realized I had idiopathic scoliosis, no known cause. I did find out in my 20s that my biological mom had scoliosis. I didn't know that, but until I got my 20s, I found out she had scoliosis. So I was thinking, okay, well, that must be why I have it, because she had it. But still, the definition is of idiopathic scoliosis is a spine curvature of an unknown cause. So, it's hard to explain to people, because they'll think, their natural mind will say, oh, they must have got an injury, or, you must have was born that way. But no, I wasn't born that way. Mine's around adolescence, early adolescent stages, my spine just started curving. So, like, your spine grows straight. Mine just decided to just start curving. That's why it has an unknown cause, because I didn't have no injuries. I wasn't born with it, in the womb with it. I didn't have any muscular problems, so it just started curving. And so the thing with scoliosis is, well, my type of scoliosis that I was diagnosed with is that the curves don't really stop. They keep going and going and going, which is why I didn't really have pain in the beginning until I got late teenage years, because my curves were getting to the point where it was bringing on pain. So my spine kept curving to the point where I started to have pain. So fast forward, I was about 21, turning 22. I was like at the peak of, the pain that I was having since I was like 17. It had only been like 4 or 5 years, but it was like a lot. It was a lot of pain. I remember some nights, I would go to sleep pain, because I worked all day at a fast food restaurant during the summer. I would go to sleep because with pain, and I remember some mornings, because I used to have to wake up really early. It's like I would wake up with the pain, so it used to feel like my body never fully reset like it would usually do at that age. But I would go to sleep and wake up with still pain, so then I would have to go throughout that next day with pain. So if you have scoliosis, you understand that chronic pain at such an early age. So after about 4 years, from 17 to 21, at 21, I remember being like really tired of being in pain. But I still live a normal life, just with pain. But other than that, I still live a normal life. And so I remember that, I was just tired of being in pain. And somebody mentioned to me about, going to a chiropractor. And I think I had did like a little bit of research, but not much about chiropractors. But I knew enough to know that, chiropractors don't necessarily, well, I won't say that, but going to the chiropractor wouldn't necessarily heal or make my curves turn back. But I just decided to try anyway, because I was just desperate. I was in pain. I was just desperate. So I did end up going to the chiropractor when I was 21, turning 22, and those adjustments, they did help with pain. Like he would pop my shoulders and neck and my hips, stuff like that. And those adjustments, they really did help with pain management. But after about 2 years of going to the chiropractor, I remember thinking to myself, do I really want to go here my whole life for the rest of my life? And so I kind of was battling in my head, should I stay or should I go? Should I keep coming to the chiropractor, or should I just stop going and figure out how to deal with the pain that I was having? And so after about 2 years of going to the chiropractor, I said to myself, I'll just get an x-ray. And if the x-ray shows that my curves are not getting any better, which, keep in mind, I kind of already knew, but I had to see it for myself. So I said, if my x-rays are not showing any improvement with my curves, then I wouldn't, after this appointment of seeing my x-rays, I wasn't going to come back. So I did an x-ray, and they compared them to my first x-rays that I had got when I began going for that 2 years. So they compared my first x-ray and then my last x-ray after 2 years, and those x-rays looked exactly the same. They looked exactly the same. And so I remember sitting there in the chiropractor office, thinking to myself, okay, so I'm not coming back. While he was explaining, the X-ray, I was just already had my mind made up that I wasn't coming back. And I forgot to mention, on the X-rays, the way that my diagnosis is, they have scoliosis with like a one curve, and then they have scoliosis where some people grow 2 curves. So I grew 2 curves. So my spine is shaped like this. The top has a curve and the bottom has a curve. And from what I learned with those curves, that the top part of my spine started to curve first, and then eventually I learned about that particular curve is that the bottom part curves to try to counter the top curve. So the top of my spine was curving like this, and then the bottom began to curve to try to counteract that curve back in place. So that just left me with 2 curves instead of 1. And I know it sounds crazy, but you just be surprised what can go on with your body, especially when it's spiritual related. And so like I said about the X-rays at the chiropractor, I made up my mind I wasn't going back. I was 23 turning 24. This is 2014. So I went to the chiropractor from 2012 to 2014. So in late 2014, I had just started back going to church after a long time, but I wasn't really serious about church, but I was interested because I just started going back. So just keep that in mind. So when I left the chiropractor's office that day, after seeing those X-rays were still the same, it's like something just told me, God can heal me. And this was back in 2014. I just remember thinking, you know what, I'm not coming back here. God can heal me. I'm not gonna have surgery, because I had already heard about, that I would probably need surgery. And so I just left that office that day with the mindset. It was just a little thought. It was like a mustard seed thought that, God can heal me. I don't want to keep going here my whole life. Also, I'm not one to take medicine. I used to take medicine, like over-the-counter medicine, those years that I was working in fast food. I would take like over-the-counter medicine to try to help with my back pain. But eventually I stopped because I said, you know what, I don't want to be dependent on medicine. I don't want to have to let medicine determine if I'm going to have a good day or a bad day. So by this time, 2014, I wasn't taking no medicine, but I did know that one day, it's like I had to start one day. What if God heals me? What if this is my testimony about how God healed me from scoliosis? And so, I left the chiropractor that day, and trying to make sure I don't forget anything. Just in the back of my mind, thinking how God can heal me. 23 years old, turning 24, still at the peak of my back pain. And it's interesting how I had like my worst, I'm only in my 30s, but I had my worst back pain when I was in my early 20s, early to mid 20s. I had some of my worst chronic pains. So at that age, I just said, I'm not taking medicine. I'm not going back to the chiropractor. I'm going to see what happens, I guess. And so after that, 23, 24 years old, I'm just going to fast forward. Around 29, I had my son when I was 26. I didn't have any complications with my pregnancy, because that was another concern that I had with having 2 curves, that maybe like carrying a baby would mess up, my spine or be too much on my spine. But thank God, that wasn't the case. And I actually hear a lot of stories of people with scoliosis say they had like perfect pregnancies. And so, I can say I had, by the glory of God, His mercy, I had, a really good pregnancy. So fast forward, had my child when I was 26. So around 29, I remember I would have I had a new symptom. Keep in mind, you have new symptoms every couple years, but new pain symptoms, because your spine is still curving. So that brings on, a new pain or a new spot of pain or a new level of pain. So I remember I turned around 29, right before I turned 30, I started having like a dull pain, but it wouldn't move. Nothing. If I sat down, stand up, it would just be this dull, stubborn pain. And it wouldn't be often. It would come like once, and then a couple months later, it wouldn't show up again. So I would forget about it. Then it would come back months later for a little bit, and then leave. So it's like I would forget about it, and when it came back, I would remember, oh, what is this pain? Where is this coming from? And then when it would leave, I would totally forget about it, because it would be like so long of a gap when I would have those dull, stubborn pains. So around the time I turned 30, I began to, it's like it just clicked. You would think I would have caught on earlier, but it clicked that I was having arthritis. Those dull pains that I would have that would come and go a month, it would come for a short period and then leave for months. That was like the beginning of my arthritis pain. And so then I began to catch on, when the seasons would change, and then when the weather would change altogether. That's when I began to have noticed that I was having the arthritis pain. And the thing with me developing arthritis is because I had scoliosis for so long. Because you think this is when I was 29, 30, I began to have arthritis pains, but I was diagnosed with scoliosis at around age 11. So that's about 18 years. I was already 18 years of having of those curves in my spine. So I was developing arthritis very early, 29 years old, and that's common. But from what I know, it is common to develop scoliosis, arthritis, due to your spine moving out of place. Your vertebrae are out of place, your discs are out of place, your ribs are out of place. So you have to think everything's out of place for at least 18 years. So anyways, I started having arthritis pains around 29, 30. They started off kind of moderate at first, but then they would get like aggressive, like the dull aches that came for like 2 or 3 hours, it would become like 6 hours before the rain. Then it would become like, and this is over a few years, then it would become like 12 hours before the rain. And then recently, before I was healed, it would be like a day or two before the rain, and that dull pain would already begin to come, and it wouldn't move until it started raining. And so anyways, I developed arthritis around 29, scoliosis arthritis around 29 or 30. I'm trying to make sure I'm staying on track. So yeah, 29 or 30, developed scoliosis arthritis, and I hadn't been to a doctor about my scoliosis since I left that chiropractor at the age of 23, turning 24. I hadn't spoken to another doctor, another professional. It's kind of like I was trying to ignore my condition in the back of my mind, knowing that God could heal me, but at the same time I was still ignoring my condition. I didn't want to deal with it. I would just take it day by day, one day at a time, one pain at a time, still not taking any medicine. I just said, I'm just going to deal with this day by day, not really looking into, long-term effects, I guess. I was just dealing with it day by day. So, 29, 30, started having arthritis pains. Those aren't good pains to have. So when I hear people say, that, when I hear people begin to talk about how they have, arthritis pains, boy, oh boy. If people only knew. But yeah, so I sympathize with a lot of people who deal with people. I sympathize with people who have to deal with arthritis pain, because for me, I can say with my experience, it was a very stubborn pain. It wouldn't move. Like with my other scoliosis pains and stiffness, at least if I sat down, they would kind of calm down. But with the arthritis pain, I could sit down, lay down, walk, sit up, and that pain would stay right there until the rain or the weather changed. And so, I just thank God, just for carrying me through that time. And so now, when I turn, I'll say this, in 2024, which was last year, 33 years old, 2024. I finally decided, I'm just gonna face the music. I hadn't been to a doctor or the chiropractor in 10 years by that time. So I said, you know what? I don't want to keep running from this, even though, I'm dealing with the pain the best way I can. I even started making like my own herbal tea blends for like inflammation and fatigue. The fatigue that I would have every day and the inflammation that I would have every day, or almost every day. I would have stiffness. It's just hard to think that I used to deal with all that stuff, but I would have stiffness. Sometimes, my spine, or I guess it was my vertebrae or disc, sometimes if the pain got really bad, it would just feel like it was just burning, like a burning sensation, at least till I sit down. But if I had to be up or stand up in a line, sit down really still for a long time, it just would be so uncomfortable. My neck would be uncomfortable. When I wake up in the morning, I would have like lower back stiffness. Anybody who has scoliosis, they recognize, the things that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But in 2024, for some reason, I said, you know what, I need another x-ray. The last x-ray I had got was in my 20s. Now I'm in my 30s. So I need to just face the music and see what's going on. So I went to my regular physician, my regular doctor, and I told her that I wanted to get an x-ray on my spine to see what my scoliosis was looking like, because I hadn't seen it in 10 years on the x-ray. And so let me backtrack. So when I got my x-ray at the chiropractor back in 2014, that was the first time back in 2012 was the first time I ever heard like a measurement that curves have measurements. I didn't know scoliosis curves had measurements until I went to the chiropractor back in 2012. But back in 2014, my curves, the way that they measured my curves, I guess different places, I know now that different places, I guess, use more specific or different methods of measuring. But back in 2014, when I left the chiropractor, my curves were measuring, oh my goodness, 38 degrees for my top curve, for my thoracic curve, and I think it was like, oh man, I can't remember, 32 degrees my lumbar curve. So I have a my upper curve is my thoracic curve, my lower curve is my lumbar curve. So my thoracic curve in 2014 on their x-ray at the chiro, they measured it 38 degrees. 38, keep that number in mind. My lumbar curve, they measured it, if I'm remembering right, it was like 32 or 34 degrees. I think it was 32 degrees. And I'm gonna put what the measurements mean as far as like mild and severe. But severe scoliosis is over 40 degrees. So by the time I left that chiropractor, I had already had severe scoliosis by the time I met that chiropractor. So just keep that in mind. 38 degrees and 32 degrees was what I was measuring at the chiropractor back in 2014 when I left. So fast forward 10 years later, I want to face the music, I want to get an x-ray, I want to see what's going on. I don't want to keep running, from what it looks like. I'm having all this pain. I might as well get an x-ray to look and see how much progression I've had. So I got the x-ray back in, I got my new x-rays in 2024, but I didn't get to see them at the time because they put them on a disc, and I can never figure out how to pull the disc up on my computer. But they did send a paper, a report or a paper with my measurements on them. So in 2024, this was 10 years after me leaving the chiro, the physician that I go to, when I got an x-ray there, they measured my lumbar curve my thoracic curve at 45 degrees and, no. They measured my thoracic curve at 40 degrees and they measured my lumbar curve at 45 degrees. And I was thinking, oh, to say I had an x-ray, my last x-ray was 10 years ago, and my 38 degree curve only went up to 40 degrees. but my 34 degree curve went up to 45 degrees. That was kind of concerning. But I said, well, that's not too bad, because I thought, after 10 years, my numbers would have been totally different. So 2014, the Rasset curve, they measured it at 38. 2024, they measured it at 40. 2014, they measured my lumbar curve at 32. 2024, they measured it at 45 degrees. So, that's still progression, but it wasn't much progression to say it had been a decade since I got my last x-ray. Right, so that's what my physician, I don't want to say the name, but that's where they measured my x-ray in 2024. So I began to make those herbal tea blends to help my inflammation and pain. I said, I'm going to at least try to do something about it without taking medicine. And, the herbal teas, they did help. I still do drink them for other reasons now, but they help with pain. They help with pain and inflammation. They help me get rest at night. It's like I can feel the reset in my body when I wake up in the morning. I still had like the arthritis. My arthritis was getting pretty worse by last year, 2024. My arthritis had gotten pretty bad. But, I would just go through it the best way I can. So I remember in late 2024, I had an arthritis flare-up. It was around Christmas. Well, it was on Christmas. It was the longest flare-up I ever had. I think it was like 2 days, maybe 2-3 days. I was having like an arthritis flare-up in my spine. It didn't really go away. I think the winter was when my arthritis would get worse, but so late 2024 I had a really bad arthritis flare up, and then early 2025 this year I had a really bad arthritis flare up. And I remember it's like I would try to do things and it just wouldn't go away. The pain wouldn't go away. So I would try to distract my body by doing other things, but the pain just wouldn't go away. So I remember I was sitting down, and I just remember tears started coming out of my eyes. And I was thinking, I wonder how much more, I had asked myself, I wonder how much more my body can take. Because I could tell, even though like mentally I wasn't tired, I could tell like my body was like really, really tired of the like scoliosis. It's just scoliosis and the arthritis. But because by this time, 2024, 33 years old, I had scoliosis 20 years by now. So my body's like worn down from just all the curving, all the moving, all the stiffness. So when I had the arthritis flare up early this year, I remember just the tears coming down. I was just like, how much more is my body gonna be able to take? But I just thank God, in those moments, I thank God that in those moments of weakness, that His strength was still made perfect. So that was that last flare up was early this year. So I'm gonna pause and just recount, through the pain that I was having from age, I would say starting at age 22, when I started learning about the Lord and the Bible. I remember when I first began to read the Bible, how when I would be in pain and I would start reading my Bible, I noticed the pain would like go away. And it's like I really didn't, I might have caught on the first time it happened, but I remember thinking, at one point, this was like early in my walk with the Lord, like I didn't know nothing about what the Holy Spirit was. I didn't know I didn't know a lot of the books of the Bible. I just knew I loved, once I started to learn how to read the Bible, that I loved to read the Bible. It was like the closest, when I read my Bible, it was the closest I ever felt to the Lord. Like through the Word, I would feel so close to Him when I read His Word. So I remember, back in my early 20s, I'm rewinding before I get to my testimony. Back in my early 20s, how when I first started seeking the Lord, how I would read my Bible and the pain would go away. And so it's like, during that time, me not really knowing who Jesus was, it's like He wanted me to know who He was. He wanted me to know that He could heal me before I even knew like what healing was. Just by reading His Word, and the pain would go away. Little did I know He was showing me, that He wanted to heal me, that He wanted me to be free, that He wanted me to come to Him for help. And so that's just something that I wanted to add. I left it out. I forgot to say it, but yeah, when I was like, that was the beginning of me learning like the power of God. 22, 23, well, 22, 23, reading that word and noticing like the pain would go away. But I didn't catch on. I still, kind of just did what I wanted to do for a while. But I did love, when I came into Christ, I loved to read the word. And so, God he was showing me like little things. Like he was giving me mustard seed trust and mustard seed faith. Just right through reading his word. Those demons, those spirits have to bow to the name of Jesus. So by reading his word, it's like that spirit would bow. That spirit of pain in my body. When I read that word, I didn't realize it, but I realize it now. When I was reading that word, those spirits, they were surrendering. They were bowing. And, I see that now. I didn't see it then. They say hindsight is 20/20, but those spirits that spirit of pain, that fatigue, it would leave. And so that's just something I wanted to point out in my testimony. Natural medicine is good, but when you're in a spiritual battle, the only way you can win is spiritually. So fast forward back to 2024 or 2025. Hold on, let me see. I feel like I'm skipping a lot of stuff. 2025, I had my last arthritis flare up, and May of this year, May the 5th, I finally went to see a spinal specialist. Because keep in mind, the only place I had looked into at the time was a chiropractor, and chiropractors are really good for like alternative methods, really good for natural alternative methods. And so early 2025, I found out that there was a spinal scoliosis clinic in North Carolina. So I set up an appointment to go there, and I said, I'm going to get a full diagnosis. Even though from experience I had already had scoliosis over 20 years by this time. So I already knew most of the stuff that they would tell me, but I just wanted to see it like on paper, I guess. And I also wanted to see it like for part of my testimony, because I knew God was going to heal me. So I said, let me have all this, recorded or documented. And if there's anything new, I wanted to hear it from a specialist. That way I can ask all the questions I had, get all the answers I needed from a specialist. So I went to the specialist. I finally faced the music on May the 5th, 2025. I went to a specialist in North Carolina. They were really good. They were connected to, I think they were connected to Duke Hospital, but they're a really good clinic. They did a full x-ray on their x-ray machine. Because I told her, I said, well, I just got my x-rays in 2024. And they told me that my curves, they measure my curves at 40 degrees at the top and 45 degrees at the bottom. So anyways, got my x-ray at the spinal clinic, and they pulled up my x-rays, and so let me do a sidebar. So the only correction to scoliosis that I have is surgery. If your curves get like above 40 degrees, they begin to see if you want to look into surgeries or intense physical therapy, which is what I went to the specialist to get. I wanted a prescription for the specific physical therapy that they had for my kind of scoliosis. So the options for me were either intense. In my mind, before I went, I said, well, I'm going to go see if they can write me a prescription to get the Scroff's therapy, which is like an intensive therapy for scoliosis patients. And or they're going to tell me I need surgery. The worst case scenario, I said to myself, was they'll tell me I need surgery, but I'm not going to get surgery. In my mind, I said, I'm not going to get surgery. So I said, worst case scenario, they'll tell me I need surgery because my curves are at 40 degrees and 45 degrees. That's what I was telling myself. So they brought in my x-ray. The lady brought in my x-ray while I was at the clinic, and she was like, so your curves are actually measuring your thoracic curve, which is my top curve. Anything, basically, I'm gonna sidebar again, sorry. Basically anything over 50 degrees is when they give you the option for the most part. Everybody's different, but from what I hear, like the magic number is 50 for, like, I guess for adults. 50 degrees or older. 50 degrees or more. They want you to look into surgery options. So I was like, well, they're not going to force me to look into surgery because my x-ray says 40 degrees and 45 degrees. So it'll still be my choice. So the lady came in, a really nice lady, with my x-rays. They put my x-rays on a big screen. I can see my whole spine, all the ribs and everything, how they were turned and bent and stuff. And she said your thoracic curve is actually measuring, not top curve, is actually measuring at 67 degrees. And your lumbar curve is 46 degrees. So in my mind, I'm like, what? I'm like, 67 degrees. That's the people that I see, like other people that I hear say what their like severe curves are. Or like people in their, like, in my mind, people in their 60s or their 70s who've had scoliosis their whole life. I was thinking that's what their curves are, not mine. I'm only 34 years old. I had all kinds of thoughts. I didn't show it on my face, but I was thinking 67 degrees. I was like, something must be wrong with their measurements. But yeah, so my curves are measuring, well, my thoracic curve is measuring over almost 30 degrees more than what in my mind that I was dealing with. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I have very, very severe scoliosis, because 45, 50 degrees is when they want you to look at, and they give you the option if you want surgery. But here I am at 67 degrees. So I was like in shock about that. And so I told her, I said, well, I got a x-ray 10 years ago at the chiropractor, and back then they told me that my curves were 38 degrees and 32 degrees. I said, that's a lot of progress for 10 years. 30 degrees to 67 degrees, 38 degrees to 67 degrees. And she let me send those old x-rays to her. She said she would try to measure them for me. She was like, no, you probably weren't 38 degrees back then. So I let her measure my old x-ray. I just had a picture of them. She went off the picture. That was the best she can go off of. I had a picture of my old x-rays from 2014. And she measured them, and she said, you weren't, she sent back a report actually. So in 2014, I was thinking I was 38 degrees, 32 degrees. She was like, you were actually about 50 degrees. Your curves were actually about at 50 degrees back in 2014. So I was shocked about that. I didn't know that my curves had progressed so much at such a young age. So anyways, so that's the number that was stuck in my mind while she was talking, telling me everything, the 67 degrees. I said, wow, I have a 67 degree curve. And I'm still able to walk. I still have good days. Even though I was having painful days, I still had good days in between, those days. The Lord was still send me relief by the reading of His Word. And so I was like, wow, I'm really blessed, not even knowing I had such a severe, very severe curves, to not have as much as pain as I was hearing that other people with my same condition was having. Because I'm in a group, where I can talk to or ask questions with other people who have the same condition as I have. So I was seeing other people were having way worse symptoms that I had, and I was at 67 degrees. So God is so good. But 67 degree curve. And so my x-rays, I've already shown my x-rays. As you can see, what 67 degrees look like. Your spine is curved, your ribs are bent and curved, so it makes it hard to sleep. So it's hard to sit down, hard to stand up for a long period of time. My hips were uneven. And at the spinal clinic, they also gave me my full diagnosis, which is idiopathic scoliosis with kyphosis and scoliosis arthritis. So that's my full diagnosis that I got for the first time. I didn't know about the kyphosis. I didn't know that's what it was called. So kyphosis is when I have scoliosis, so my spine curves. But kyphosis is when, I'm saying it right. Kyphosis is when your spine also rotates and tilts. So my spine is curving and it's also turning, like rotating, which makes like my shoulder go up this way, my hip goes up this way, so one leg is longer than the other leg, so my steps are uneven, which is another thing that makes, you know, walking for a long time uncomfortable. But so yeah, so my full diagnosis May 2025 was severe idiopathic scoliosis, kyphosis, and scoliosis arthritis. And she also told me that the muscles in my back were degenerating from my spine being bent for so long, moving for so long. She was telling me like my muscles in my upper back, where my upper curve is, were like degenerating and getting tired and getting weak because trying to hold my spine in place and my spine is still moving. So yeah, that too. And that was kind of like a new thing that I didn't expect to hear about my muscles degenerating. So it kind of motivated me to just try to lose some weight, try to take some of this pressure off my back. And so I had already lost some weight by the time I went to that appointment in May, because I had already started trying to lose weight. But once, you know, I heard that, you know, she was telling me how my muscles were degenerating, you know, I said, well, you know, now I really want to stay motivated to just try to be more healthier. I'm not the healthiest person, but I did make up my mind, you know, I would lose weight. So, you know, a lot of people, you know, they probably thought I was losing weight because I wanted to look good, which is part of it. But I really wanted to lose weight because, you know, I don't want my spine to keep suffering. I want to do whatever I can do naturally to keep the pain away, keep my muscles, get my muscles back in shape. Started like walking with weights. I would walk every day, no matter how hot it was. And when I would walk, I would try to speak over my body. And sometimes I would still get discouraged. I don't want to act like, you know, I had it all together all the time. I would get discouraged, but I would just keep exercising. On the days that I wasn't discouraged, I would try to speak like life over my body. And I still had like a lot of questions, but I would just try to speak life over my body. So yeah, after that appointment in May to the specialist, the lady did actually tell me, she was like, she made an appointment for me to come back in 6 months, and that was in May. She wanted me to talk to the surgeon because I told her that, you know, I want to try the Stross therapy. Stross therapy is like a specific therapy for scoliosis patients. So she gave me like, she printed out for me different facilities that offer Stross therapy, which is what I went to get. It was a prescription for that. And all the facilities that she gave me were at least 2 hours away. So I drove 2 hours to that appointment to get like a full diagnosis and to get a prescription for Stross therapy, just to find out that all the therapists the Stross therapists, scoliosis therapists, facilities are like 2 hours away. So I was kind of like, okay, well, now I can't get Stross therapy. Now I can't get the therapy that I wanted. And they want me to have, well, they're not pushing me, it's my choice, but she's like, you probably either now or later, preferably now, to look into surgery because your curve is pretty aggressive. Your curves are pretty aggressive. And you know, when your curves get like really bad, it can mess with your breathing. You know, your organs get squished up from your spine, just moving, your organs get squished up. Your muscles get weak, like she said mine were doing. Your hips get uneven, like mine's are. And it makes things just very uncomfortable. Your arthritis gets worse. And so, you know, she didn't push surgery on me, but she did let me know, hey, either now or later, you may need this just so you can have a better quality of life. And with the scoliosis surgery, I'll explain that really quick. For the surgery that I needed, she said they would fuse my spine from T3 to L3. So the parts of my spine that were curved started at T3, and they would fuse it all the way down to L3. So basically with the spinal fusion surgery that, you know, I had already looked into it, but the spinal fusion surgery that they want me to look at is basically they break some parts of your spine, and I'll try to post it if I can, post like a picture or demonstration. But it's a very extreme surgery. It's not nothing you say, hey, well, I'll just get surgery and fix my scoliosis. There's a lot that comes with getting your spine reconstructed. So because my curve, I have 2 curves, and they would have to fix both curves and then fuse my spine so that the curves won't come back. And so basically they would break pieces of bone off of my spine for bone graft. Well, of course they would cut me open first, break off pieces of I may be saying it in the wrong order, but they would break off pieces of my spine for the bone graft, drill holes all the way up from the T3 to the L3, drill holes all the way down on each side, place, I don't know what they're called, I don't know the names of these tools, but they place like these metal sticks or titanium sticks up each side, and then they use those sticks as anchors to turn your spine back into place, rotate your spine back into place, rotate it back into place. And they have to be very careful because you can, it's your spine, you can hit your fluid, you can hit your spinal cord and leak fluid. There's so many complications that can happen. They can turn it and it can hit a nerve, you can end up paralyzed. It's very risky. It's not something you say, hey, I want to have surgery so my spine can look good. It's a price, there's a lot that comes with that. So I commend anybody that is brave enough to do that surgery and with no regrets. But I do hear a lot of people regret the surgery once they get it, but that's not everybody. So yeah, so they break the spine, they break parts of your spine, they drill holes all the way up, turn it back in place, rotate it back in place. They take all those sticks out. Yeah, I'm probably saying it wrong, but they drill the rods in. You have these titanium rods going down each side of your spine. They drill all the rods in. So you have rods and screws on each side. So basically it's like a brace. You know how you get braces on your teeth? It's like a brace for your spine, but it stays. It has to stay there. Because if not, scoliosis, your spine will just start turning back. Some people say, well, why don't they just turn your spine and then just leave it? Because scoliosis, the spirit, I'm going to say it, the spirit that you're dealing with, it's going to make your spine, it's made to move your spine. So if they go in and straighten it, you go through all of that surgery, your spine can still move back in place without all those rods and stuff. Your spine can still move right back out of place, and you went through all that for nothing. So yeah, so that's the surgery that I was looking at, that the option that they wanted me, the other option that I was recommended to go was them put those rods and screws in my spine, and the bone that they took out, they broke and took out, they use it for bone graft. So it's basically, it's a fusion. They're fusing your bone, your spine straight. So you lose mobility with that surgery because they have to fuse your bones hard. And when your spine is hard, you can't necessarily move a certain way. Your spine is straight after the surgery, but you can't move. Your mobility is lost. Your neck movement, moving from side to side, because you're fused. You're stuck. Your spine is stuck in place because they don't want the curves to come back. And so surgery is really long. It's like 6 to 8. Some people have 7 hours. Some people I see have 8 hours. Some people have 10 hours. You just never know what can happen once they cut you open. So it's like a risk for infection. Your body can reject the hardware, and then the hardware makes arthritis even worse because you got metal on your bones that makes the arthritis you're already having can just become even worse. So yeah, your spine is straight, but it's not just that easy. There's a lot of risks that come with that. You're laying on your lungs under anesthesia for 6 to 8 hours, so your lungs have to recover from the surgery, because that's a lot to be flat on your lungs under anesthesia. Your lungs have to recover. It's like your bowels have to recover, and these are all things that from people who had surgery that I've interacted with, so I'm not just making it up. But yep, the hardware can cause an infection, and I've even seen people had the surgery and their curve started to come back. Like they'll fuse you a certain point. Let's say if they fuse you in the middle of your spine, the top the top of their spine would start to curve. It's like the scoliosis would try to just come right back. And so that, and I just want to put a side note, that things like that are like telltale signs that you're fighting something spiritual. When there's like an unknown cause to something, unknown reasoning behind it, for me, from my experience, it's more than likely a spiritual battle you're fighting. But not everybody knows that, so we just have to, so people will just do what they can do in the natural, but you can't blame them. But I knew that my battle was spiritual. I know that my spine moving without my permission, or by its own permission, I knew that that's for me. I know that there's something spiritual to that. Why does my body feel like it can move? My spine feel like it can curve without permission. And so I know it sounds crazy, but hopefully that gives better insight for someone. But for me, this is just my experience. I remember I would tell, I would think to myself, like, my body's not supposed to be like this. My body should not be tormented like this. It's not supposed to be tormented like this. I would just look at my x-rays and be like, my spine is not supposed to move like that by itself. Why is it moving by itself? These are all like spiritual things that I would begin to look into for a long time after I, came into the Word. I would just look at my x-rays like, it's not natural. There's no known cause. I've never had an injury. Your spine just keeps moving and moving and moving. That is a spirit to me. I'm talking for me. That is a spirit. That's not nothing that can be explained with science. They try to break down, they try to come up with these explanations, but there is no explanation. Idiopathic means unknown cause, meaning they cannot figure out why my spine decided to just start curving uncontrollably. So for me, that's a telltale sign that, I'm fighting something spiritual. I'm not fighting something that's natural. I'm not fighting something that I'm supposed to have. My body's not supposed to move the way it's moving without my permission. My spine's not supposed to move to the point where it's torturing other parts of my body. And that's just for me. And so that's why I wanted to get some of the points up here. So so that was May 2025. And by this time, 2025, I was diagnosed with scoliosis 24 years ago. It's been over 2 decades. My pain that started at 17, so this is 2025, almost 18 years of pain. So 24 years since diagnosis and almost 18 years of pain. I got so used to like masking the pain, just wearing a mask, just dealing with what's in front of me. A lot of times when I was really young, not really young, but when I was work, I would like complain about my back hurting. People would look at you like, there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, on the outside, I look totally fine. Unless I showed my hump and say, this is where my hump is, which I never did. I look totally healthy. I was like 120 pounds, totally healthy. I walked normal, talked normal. I was just in a lot of pain. So, never look at a person and think that what's going on with them, because some conditions are invisible. Some people have conditions and you would never know it until they open their mouth and told you or showed you. So anyway, so people used to tell me, well, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, you're too young to have back pain, not knowing that I was dealing with something very serious, something very unnatural that I had no control over. So that's why I'm sympathetic when it comes to people that deal with things that you can't necessarily see from the outside, because I know what it feels like for people to just look at you and be like, oh, you don't go through nothing, you don't know what pain is, you're too young to know what bad pain is. You're too young to know what bad pain is. So it'll open your eyes to be understanding. People didn't know I was dealing with arthritis. You would never look at me and think that I was dealing with flare-ups from spinal arthritis, stiffness every day, just masking the pain. So there's people out there that really suffer, even from worse things than what I suffer with, but there's people out there that really suffer and you can never tell. So that's why you always have to just, if you don't understand, just say less words. Just say less words, or just try to be understanding, because you cannot look at somebody and tell their testimony. So anyways, I'm trying to make sure I stay on track. This is a long video. So yeah, so I think I covered everything with that appointment. So by this time, I came into the Word, the Lord, the church at 23 years old. One of the first things He had already shown me was that He can heal me, but that I can be healed. That mustard seed faith, or that mustard seed that He put in me, because I didn't put it in myself. So even though I knew I could be healed, I would still, be discouraged sometimes, or wonder if I'll ever feel normal, if I'll ever know what it's like to feel normal. I'll always just have thoughts. Sometimes I would get depressed. The pain would, get me a little bit depressed in my 20s. It would get me depressed. Sometimes I would cry. I remember when I first learned to pray, prayer really helped. When I began to learn how to pray in my 20s, like really pray for real, it really did help with the pain as well. But the Word was really like, the Word was like medicine. The Word of God is like medicine. So, I'm trying not to tell another testimony while telling this testimony, but I'll just say this. When I came into the Lord and I began to learn like what the Holy Spirit was, I remember thinking, I really want to be healed one day, but I really want the Holy Spirit. I used to say, I know if I get the Holy Spirit, I will still eventually be healed. So I just thank God, for the Holy Spirit, showing me things about my condition, that it is spiritual, it's not natural. So some things, only God by His Spirit can reveal to you, or reveal it to me. Without His Spirit, I don't think I would know for sure. I could be wrong. I'm not sure if I would understand that what my body is was fighting is spiritual. How like pain, the torment and pain, how spiritual that is. I always looked at it as symptoms, but sometimes these symptoms are spirits. And so I know without God's help and by the wisdom of His Holy Spirit that I wouldn't have learned those things by my own understanding. So I just want to throw that in. Just try to look, if you're going through like a condition, especially if it's a chronic condition that just kind of just popped up, that's something to look at. That's a spirit that you want to test, because sometimes we don't know the spirit until we test that spirit, test that pain. I didn't realize that through me reading the Word and those pains leaving, that those spirits are being tested. See, in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, which is true, I was being healed through His Word, but by me reading, those spirits are being tested. Because they left, that's a sign right there for me to know that I'm fighting a spiritual battle, not a natural battle. But anyways, let me see. So let me get to my testimony, the healing. Oh my goodness, this video is so long. So July 2025. I don't even know where to start. So July 2025, nothing spectacular going on. I'll be honest, I was like in a state of discouragement just from different things going on. I had randomly had this dream in June, late June this year, that I was walking down the sidewalk, because I always walk down the sidewalk every day. During the summer, I would walk every day. So in the dream, I was walking down the sidewalk that I usually walk, and somebody came in the dream. Someone came and laid their hands on my back, and it's like I fell down. It's like I fell out. I didn't know what happened. They just laid their hands on my back really aggressively, and I fell down in the dream. And then somebody else came in the dream, and they began to pray. And then I woke up. So I was like, okay, that's a random dream. But when I woke up, it's like I noticed the pain was gone. I'm getting to the testimony. This is just the beginning of it, the beginning of this part. But I had that random dream out the blue, in the middle of just going through. I wasn't even looking for the dream. I had that random dream, and I noticed after I had that dream, my back wasn't hurting anymore. And it would be like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. That was the longest I had been without like pain, like consistently days straight, 7 days straight. It was like almost 7 days, maybe like 6 or 7 days. So that just happened out of the blue in late June. It was June 24th when I had that dream. And for a week straight, I didn't have no pain. So then after that week, the pain came back. But I was thankful, just for God doing it. I was like, wow, where'd that come from? But so the pain came back after a week after that dream, But I just remember that dream, and I was just grateful that happened, to have some relief. So late July, I'm gonna skip over late July, a month later. I don't know if they want me to say their name, but someone came to me and said that this is a prayer sister in Christ, a prayer warrior, intercessor. She came to me, well, she said to me that she felt like she needed to help me or something. That something told her that while she was down here, that she was supposed to help me. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm open to it, but I'm like, I'm not expecting nothing, but I'm gonna go with it because, I'm not gonna turn down prayer. So I was open to it, we were gonna do this prayer thing we were gonna agree in prayer at midnight, just praying for different things, for the will of the Lord be done, for like spiritual warfare, just, a lot of different things, because a lot of different things are going on. So, we were just agreed. She wanted to do prayer with me for a couple of days at midnight, prayer in the midnight. And so, we did that, and we started that. I guess I can go into details. So we started that prayer, I don't remember days of the week, but the first night of that prayer started on July 26th, when the clock turned midnight and it hit July 26th. So that was the first night that we did our, midnight prayers. And so we just praying, for the will of the Lord, and just praying against the enemy, warfare and stuff. She would do the prayers at midnight. I remember thinking, how I would pray for certain things, but something totally different would happen. Like, let's say I was praying for a breakthrough, for like something, anything. I would focus my prayer on that, and the Lord would totally move in another direction, like do something else, breakthrough, or reveal something in a whole nother area. So after that, I learned, expect the unexpected, because it's like the things I was praying for, or the things I would specifically pray for, it's like God would take me in a whole nother direction. Like, this is where you need to be praying. So anyways, yeah, we started the prayer that midnight, July 26th, when it hit midnight. July 25th turned into July 26th. Midnight, July 26th. That was the first night of prayer. So the second night of prayer, midnight, we began to pray again. And as she was praying, I noticed that we were sitting down praying in the dark room. I felt this pain in my lower spine, because I was feeling fine when I sat down to pray. I just felt fine. Sat down to pray with her, and I remember when she was praying, I felt this pain in my lower curve. I had two curves. I felt the pain in that lower curve as she was praying in the middle of the prayer. I felt like a sharp pain. It was so sharp. Like how a Charlie horse cramp, when it starts, it moves like so slow, it takes forever to release. That's what the pain felt like in my lower spine. It was a sharp pain. I remember feeling like so uncomfortable. And it started in the middle of the prayer. Like she had already been praying, and then this pain just came out the blue. Very sharp pain. It was so sharp. And then I remember sitting there so uncomfortable, but I was like, I'm not gonna move, I'm not gonna get up. I'm just gonna ride it out. I just thought it was just another bad pain. And so I remember it started in my lower spine. It's slow, sharp, it was very sharp pain. And it started in my lower curve. And as she was praying, then the pain began to move really slow up my curve. Prayer still going on. Pain really moving, very sharp, moving really slow. Scale to 1 to 10, pain's like a 10. But I'm just sitting there in prayer. Really slow up my spine. Then it stopped, and then it just like sat there. And I remember just feeling so uncomfortable as the prayer was going on. She just kept praying. Then I felt the pain. As it stopped, sat there, it just left. It's like it just went up and it just left. And thank God. And so the pain had left. So the prayer was over. The prayer had ended. And I remember she was asking me, like, did I see anything during the prayer? I said, no, I didn't see anything, but I felt a lot of pain. I was trying to sit there. I was going to sit there. I wasn't going to get up, but my back was in so much pain in the middle of the prayer. And then she asked me, oh, so is it still there or something? I can't remember. And I said, but it's gone now. So I just took it as it was. Whatever that pain was, it just came during the prayer. I said, well, this spirit of pain, or this spirit of scoliosis, infirmity, I said to myself, well, it must have just got mad during the prayer and just started acting up. And then when the prayer was over, it was gone. Because that's how spiritual things work. During the prayer, it's like it waited to that prayer to show up. That's like a pattern I would notice. Like during reading, during prayer, this pain would either come or it would leave. And even when I would testify how, about my spine, which I would try not to, but sometimes I just couldn't help it. Even when I would testify about my spine in church, it's like when I would leave church or when I got home, the pain would come. It's like because I gave God the glory, that pain would come back shortly after, like it was aggravated. So this is why I say spirits are real. Spirits show themselves more than you would ever think. The things we feel like it's just this, it's just that. I didn't realize that the devil was shooting arrows of pain at me. I call them arrows of pain. Those arrows that fly by day. He was shooting arrows of pain at me because I was giving God the glory through my testimony. He would send pain shortly after. And I remember even this one time when I testified, this was very recent, before I got healed, I testified about how I was having arthritis pain, but I still gave God the glory that, I still have my health and strength. And I remember when I got home that night, that pain, it's like the pain just came back. I said, well, I done told my testimony, and now here come that spirit of pain, here come that scoliosis acting up again, because I told my testimony. So I remember that night, I said, you know what? I'm gonna test this spirit. Because, I was used to the patterns, but I never really intentionally test the spirit. I would just by chance say, I'm gonna read my word and see if the pain go away. But that night, after I testified and that pain came back after church, I said, you know what? I'm gonna test this spirit. When I read this word and this pain go away, I know for sure that I'm dealing with the enemy. I'm not dealing with scoliosis. I'm dealing with the enemy that sent me this scoliosis. So sure enough, I began reading because I said, I'm going to test the spirit. I'm not going to just be in pain and wait till it goes away. I'm going to test it. I said, I'm going to read my word like I used to do, like I did before, when the pain would go away. I said, I'm going to read it and see if the pain go away. So this time, I remember I read my word that night, and the pain tried to stick around. And I said, I'm going to keep reading my word, and then I'm going to pray. And guess what happened? Not long after the prayer, the pain left. That pain, that affliction, it left. I said, for sure I know that this is a spirit. This is not just scoliosis caused by unknown cause. This is a spirit. This is the enemy attacking my body, tormenting my body, moving my body without permission, attacking with pain, gave me arthritis. It's like the light bulb, this is that night, the light bulb, when I did that, tested that spirit, the light bulb that should have came on a long time ago, it finally came on and it stayed on. And I said, I'm dealing with the spirit. Yes, it's a diagnosis, but it's from a spiritual cause for me. So anyways, back to my testimony. So the second night of prayer, July 27th, 2025, that pain, that spirit of infirmity during the prayer it showed itself one last time. I didn't know that was the last time. We weren't praying specifically for healing. We were praying like for the will of the Lord and warfare, and just it was a lot of things that goes on. And July 27, 2025 was the last time I felt that pain from my lower back. That's where all my stiffness, well, not all, most of my stiffness used to be in my lower back. That's where that spirit started at. Came up my curve, sat there, tried to torment me one last time. But the prayers were so strong, it had to leave. And thank you, Lord. Ever since that July 27th midnight prayer, I have been freed and delivered of my stiffness, of my pains, of arthritis, of my hip pains, of my sleep pains. I would sleep because your spines are curved, and when you sleep on a mattress, it's different. It's not like a normal person. My sleep pains was gone. My fatigue had left. Daily fatigue I would have. I noticed after that prayer that night, I wake up, no pain, no stiffness, no fatigue. No pain, no stiffness, no fatigue. What else, y'all? It's so much. Just that torment caused by being afflicted for so long. My body was so tormented. It was gone. And you know, I can feel after a couple of days, I can feel like my body was like finally resting. It wasn't fighting inflammation, fighting tiredness, fighting stiffness, fighting the flare-ups of arthritis, it wasn't fighting hip pain anymore. It was like, you know, like when you well, I didn't push the baby, I had a C-section, but you know, like once a mom gives birth, after all that 9 months and then all that labor, you can finally say, when that pain left and I realized what happened to me. It took me like a week to realize what happened to me. It's like I could say, thank you, Lord. My body can rest. It can like really rest. So it took me like, this happened July 27th, that midnight hour when it hit July 27th. And I remember, I think about after day 2, I said, this is like 2 days later, I said, I'm not in pain. And then I'm thinking to myself, but I'm not, it's not like normal. I'm not in no pain at all, like nothing. I don't even feel like I have scoliosis. This is like day 2. So I remember like day 3, day 4, you know, keep in mind, the previous month I had that dream, and you know, I had been pain-free for a week. So I said to myself, you know, if I go past the week without pain, then I know something happened that night. So it would be like day 2, day 3, and I think about after day 4, I felt like, okay, I must be dreaming, like something's not the same. So I think after like day 5, I started, when I would pray, I said, Lord, I need confirmation. I need confirmation. Like, is this for real? Because I just felt different. I know, like before, like the word would take away the pain, but this was like a total, I don't even know how to describe, like a total deliverance. And so I think like after day 4 or 5, you know, I said, I need to pray about this specifically. Like I say my regular prayers, then I said, I'm going to specifically, after I say my regular prayers at night, at the night hour, I said, I'm going to specifically pray and ask, am I healed? Lord, I need you to show me. Even though he'd already shown me. Because I would wake up in the morning, before I would go to bed at night, when I noticed the pain wasn't there, a couple days after that prayer, I would say, Lord, I didn't have no pain today. If you allow me to go to sleep and wake up the next morning, tomorrow morning, and there's no pain, I know I'm healed. And so the next morning I wake up, no pain. So then it's like I'm in disbelief. So I say, Lord, I know I said this yesterday, but if I go to bed tonight and I wake up again in the morning with no pain, then I know I'm healed. So I woke up the next morning, no pain. So I said, Lord, one more time. I said, Lord, one more time, please confirm with me again that if I go to bed and if you allow me to wake up the next morning, that there be no stiffness, no pain, then I know I'm healed. And so I woke up the next day again, no stiffness, no pain. I knew I was healed. And so I remember, this is like I don't know how long after, because I'm losing count now, but this is like maybe a week later. I was just in disbelief. I couldn't even sleep. Like I would sleep because I would pray. I'd be up late praying because I just couldn't believe it. Then I would try to go to sleep and I couldn't sleep because I just felt like I was dreaming. Like 17 years, 18 years of pain, and I don't even see no more signs of it. So I think that, like, after a week, I said, you know what? And maybe I shouldn't tell this. I'll tell most of it, but just to help someone. I said, tonight I'm gonna pray. It was just like a week after he confirmed to me multiple times that I was healed. I said, you know what, Lord, tonight I'm gonna really, after I say my regular prayers, I'm gonna really set aside this time, and I want you to please show me that I've been healed. Please show me through prayer. Please reveal it to me some way, somehow. Please speak to me, Lord, so that I will know that I am healed, because I want to testify that I am healed, right? Even though I already knew it, I was already crying, I was already losing sleep, but I said, Lord, if you just speak to me, please talk to me through this prayer. I'm gonna pray until you talk to me. Then I know, so that I know, I want to hear from you that I'm healed. So I remember that night, it was really late, but I was already not getting no sleep because I couldn't believe it. So I remember that night that I was praying, and I just heard so many things. God was he's just so merciful. He don't have to answer us, but he come down, and because he loves us so much, he just tell us things that, But anyways, I was praying, and he showed me so many things, dreams. Well, let me stay on that night. That night, he just spoke to me so many things. I mean, I wrote all this stuff down. I'm not going to read it, but I wrote all the things that I heard down while I was praying, because I said, I don't want to forget this. I don't want to forget it for a later testimony. I don't want to forget it. But he told me so many things. He told me to be free. He told me that to go be free. Man, it's so many, I can't remember. So I'm glad I wrote it down. But he just showed me so many things. The scriptures, I had to write down the scriptures that were coming up while I was praying. But God is faithful. And after that night of prayer, I knew that it was time for me, to tell what the Lord had done. I was like, okay, now I can tell it. Now I know for sure that the Lord healed me that night, July 27th, midnight, 2025. And that spirit of infirmity, that tormenting, painful, lying spirit, that thief that tried to steal my joy, tried to kill my happiness, tried to steal my health, that thief that came to steal, kill, and destroy my body, the Lord had set me free. The Lord had made that demon bow. He made that spirit bow. He made that spirit leave. It tried to show up and bring me pain that night during prayer, but it had to go. It was mad because it had to go. And that's what I truly know, that I knew for sure that wasn't just pain, that was deliverance. That spirit, when I felt that pain leave, that was a spirit. That was that sickness. That was those afflictions. That was 17 years of torment leaving. That was arthritis leaving. That was everything. It took everything with it because of God's power. Not because of me, not because I'm so great, not because I'm so faithful or so perfect, so faithful in my walk. Sometimes I get discouraged. So, not because of nothing I did, not because I'm so worthy to have this testimony, but because now I can say I know that when he shed his blood on the cross, when Jesus shed his blood, that was the price he was paying for me. That was the price that he was paying for me to be healed. He paid the price for me. And there's nothing else I could have done besides believe him. And so, so there's nothing great that I did. God can heal anybody. He can heal anybody. There's no standards, for God to come reach you. When I first started reading my word, I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know he could heal. I knew of healing, but I didn't know how it works. But even when I was so simple-minded, such a baby, just reading his word, he was already showing me, hey, I can heal you. Hey, you can be delivered. Hey, you don't have to live like this. My word is sufficient. My word is enough. I'm just thankful knowing that I'm nothing special. Because me knowing that I'm not special, is me knowing that he did it because he loved me. because he loved me before I loved him. And so, yeah, so that is my testimony. And I remember when I first came to Christ, first began to know him, like when I first realized how powerful he is. I remember picturing myself, I was like, one day I'm gonna be able to tell my testimony about how God healed me. And that was 12 years ago that, I had that thought, one day I'll be able to have this, maybe this could be my testimony, how God healed me. And so, I'm just thankful just for that. Trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. Maybe another video, but I'm just thankful for that testimony. I'm thankful for the dreams. I have so many dreams that he showed me. Once I asked him for confirmation, he showed me confirmation over confirmation through dreams. I even had a dream, I won't go into details, that my doctor came in my room and sat down at my desk and had an appointment right there at my desk. That was like very confirming. I wrote down that dream. Maybe I'll tell it later. But I even had a dream of that. The doctor came in my room and sat down at my desk. The Lord is just so merciful. He is so gracious. And if we seek him with our whole hearts, I just imagine the things he can do, or the things that he will do. So I hope I didn't miss anything, but there's more. My testimony is not complete. There'll be another part sooner than later. There'll be another part to this testimony. Anybody who knows how scoliosis works knows that there's more to tell. There's more I have to show. I won't be just telling you about it. I will be showing you. I'll be showing you, but it's not the time right now. But the time is coming. The time is coming very soon, where I'll be able not to just tell it, but I'll be able to show people, show them the glory of God, so that God will get all the glory. When God healed me, I said, Lord, I want you to get all the glory, all of it. I don't want no one to think that there is nothing that I did, because there was nothing I could have done. I want God to get all the glory, all the glory, all the glory. So I just thank God, just seeing, just through the healing, how he's showing me, showing me what sickness, just the root of sickness and pain. I can't go into details because it's too early. I guess it's too early for me to talk about, but when God healed me of specifically that arthritis, it's like my eyes have been open to what a lying spirit looks like, to what affliction from the enemy looks like, to what we think is a chronic diagnosis is something totally spiritual, totally different. So I was chronically diagnosed, but now I'm chronically healed by the blood of Jesus Christ. And soon I will be able to tell you another testimony. I don't want to show my face on YouTube too much, because that's not why I made this page. But I just had to get my testimony out. And so I hope this encouraged somebody. Never give up. God would never forsake you. He would never leave you. I was in pain for almost 18 years. I was diagnosed 24 years ago. But look what God is doing. Look what God has done. He can do it for anybody. He can do it for anybody according to your faith. He can do it to anybody, for anybody. So I hope this helped. And it's very late, so I'm going to get off here. And just remember to have faith and doubt not. No matter what the condition is, to not be afraid, but only believe. Thank you, Jesus.